So the other style would be a tapered leg with no curves, just straight tapers. I'm going to show you a two-sided taper. This could also be a 3 or 4-sided taper, single-sided taper, doesn't matter. I'll talk about what you would do if it's a 3 or 4. It's the same process, pretty much with a couple more wedges, basically. At this point, before I'm tapering, I have my joinery done, and my pieces fit, and now my reward is I get to taper my legs. I've drawn here my mortises here, and on this one I drew where my apron is actually sitting, right? So that dotted line around my mortise, I have a shoulder all the way around that tenon, that sits on there, so that's actually the space it's taking up. And I want to taper below that. I want to make sure that I have a nice flat face where that tenon meets, so I don't start my taper too high. So it's good to step down 1/4 of an inch, 3/8 of an inch, whatever you want. Or if your design dictates it, the taper could start all the way down here. That's fine too, but you don't want to get too close to the mortise. And even when I cut this at the table saw, I'm going to have a nice consistent rip. I'm not going to go right to that dotted pencil line because I'm going to take a few swipes with my plane upstairs to clean my leg up. You'll get burn marks. You always want to clean it up with tools. If you have uncooperative wood, you'll use your card scraper and some sandpaper. So this is 1.5 inches square. I want to go down to 1 inch square at the bottom. So from just about this line down to 1 inch square down here. Traditionally, the taper are on the inside faces of your piece. I know where my inside faces are because that's where the mortises are. So I'm going to measure from the outside of the leg 1 inch. And I'll draw those lines. In reality, you actually only need this line once on your piece, but I'll draw it fully so you guys can see what's going on. So that's from one outside face where there's no mortise. I'll twist it to the other one. This has no mortise. And striking those lines, now I have a 1 inch square right there. That means I'm ripping this off and all that off, and I'll be left with a 1 inch square. Okay? And if I was doing a 3-sided taper, my square would be, I'd have to take, a little bit off this side, a little bit off that side, readjust for a heavier cut on an adjacent face, right? Or if it was a 4-sided taper, this square would be in the center, and I'd be taking the same amount off each. We have 2 jigs for this. One of them is, this is sort of the first iteration, and this is its older sibling. And this thing is more of a beast for sure. They both would work. This one, people seem to have added these blocks. This didn't exist before. If you start manipulating our jigs, I'm just going to ask that you don't, or just make your own. Because now there's a lot going on here that didn't need to happen before. So don't add a bunch of stuff here. Also, yesterday we had to, this MDF edge doesn't actually make contact with the blade. Otherwise, this would slowly start getting smaller and smaller. And someone used this and there was a bunch of bandsaw marks. So we had to make it a bit smaller. So I asked, try not to cut into that MDF. Let's leave the width as it is. Something to note about these jigs in general, when you're ripping stuff through the table saw, safest way to make them is putting these toggle clamps into hardwood, not softwood, not plywood, into hardwood. And that's glued onto this plywood. It's also screwed in from the bottom. And that's because when you're putting all that clamping pressure down, if I only had screws going this way, it's barely grabbing that 3/4 inch ply, and it could rip up and out. And then something flies in my face. So good practice to always screw those in from the bottom. Okay. So here, this is a nice safety measure here. Just clamp onto the fence. So now I can still slide this, but and it's not going to fling at my face, right? It's just sort of locked in the fence, but I can still move it and do all that. So now, I need to make a couple movements. I can release these, move this around, and again, this was not part of the jig in the beginning. I don't know what this is, so you can ignore it. This toggle clamp is a heavy-duty one, and it will hold your leg down. It's one is all you need. So maybe we'll take that off one day. What I do want is this, I want the reference edge to be flush against this plywood face. And I want this kissing this block of wood here. This block of wood has a screw in here, a little Kreg screw. And I can take a square head screw and just project that screw out right there. You guys see that poking out? And what's nice about that is that when I find my position, I can really lock that leg into the end grain, right? I just give a little dimple there and it sort of hooks onto there. Another easy way to lock things in. And which is also why we don't want to cut into this jig anymore, because you're going to cut a screw and that's going to make the saw stop go off. Okay, so I have this pencil line. I want to just bury that pencil line behind this wall. I don't want to cut right to it yet. I'll clean it up with my hand plates. And if you, let's say your stock is 1.5 square and you drew it tapering down to 3/4 of an inch. I'm going to recommend you, 1, do test stock, and 2, maybe go down to 1 inch square first. See what it really looks like, and you might go, you know, that's enough. I don't actually want to go down to 3/4. Might be too dramatic. You can always take more off later, so keep that in mind. So I'm going to bring that down and just tuck that pencil line away. There. Bring this, now I can pivot this a bit, and I want my material to be inside of the MDF until just below that dotted pencil line I've established. So I know I can feel just a little wood projecting off of there, so I'm going to lock it in there. Locking the fence in first, then I'll clamp the material down. Someone was here yesterday. So this isn't clamping. You can take a flathead screw. No, you can't. You can take a wrench, loosen that bolt, that nut. Then I'll lift this up to show you. I'm going to project this out a little bit more. Bringing that out. So I'm getting some clamping pressure, still not enough. I need to bring that screw out a little bit more. So that feels good, right? That's clamped down real good. And I do want to bring this, pressure is good. I want to bring the clamp over the piece just a little more so I can slide this back and forth. There we go. That feels nice. Get these out of the way. This side of the way. Raise the blade so I can cut through my leg. And just tap that over till I'm just not touching the MDF. with the outside of the blade. Okay, let's see what that does. Yep, okay. So everything's clamped down. Now feed it all the way through. I'm going to save this wedge, pull this back, and notice I'm ripping where my mortise is. I know where that is. You can always use blue tape to help you. You're like, you're only clamping down where you see blue tape, those sorts of things. Now I'm going to flip it 90 degrees so the other mortise is exposed towards the blade. And if I clamp this down again, I'm putting it against my plywood edge, dropping it onto that screw, projecting out. I'm not getting good clamping pressure because I just reduced the thickness of that. So you take your wedge and just shim it under here until you get good clamping pressure again. And this is all you would do is you would keep doing that for a 3-sided taper or a 4-sided taper. So you don't have to keep readjusting the distance of that machine screw. So that's all I had to do. And that's all I had to do. That's all I had to do. That's all I had to do. Let's do it again. And there you go. A pretty decent 2-sided taper. So super consistent, super easy. You could do this all, and see how far away I still am from that dotted line. And, a few swipes with my plane, and I can start that taper right below where my mortise is. So, but I'd look at it and go, maybe I'll try 7/8, see what that looks like, or 15/16. But you're always reducing it on each face of whatever that is. So, if you don't like this, or it makes you nervous, or you just don't like the technique, you can always draw these tapers at the bandsaw. Draw them and then cut them at the bandsaw. Clean it up with your plane, and then do the other face. That's totally fine. So this is just really consistent, really fast. So if I was batching out side tables, for sure this is worth making, right? Any questions before I show you one more thing upstairs?
Can you go over,
No, go ahead.
Can you go over how you line it up for where
Where this is?